Happy Easter, everybody! It's actually about 5 days before Easter, but it's still a great time to get started with these Easter Brookies. I can't wait for you to see how we buried these mini chocolate eggs inside. Let's get started. To simplify things, I've divided the ingredients into two separate lists. The first is for the brownie layer and the second is for the cookie layer. The special ingredient is these mini Cadbury chocolate eggs that can be found at any grocery store around the Easter holiday season. They look really neat and they're filled with chocolate, so they're perfect for this recipe. They're fairly cheap and a 9-ounce bag usually costs around $3 or $4. Alright, let's get started with the recipe. Preheat your oven to 350 degrees and prepare a 9x13 inch baking pan. You can use parchment paper or cooking oil. Now we can start preparing the ingredients. Begin by melting the stick of butter. Just make sure to use a microwave-safe bowl or glass. I heated the butter in two 30-second intervals, stirring in between. After that, it was thoroughly melted. Now we're ready to start mixing some ingredients. To begin, grab a large bowl, then pour in the melted butter and granulated sugar. Then, use a mixer to combine. You can use a stand mixer like I did, or an electric mixer is fine as well. On a low speed setting like this, it usually takes around 2 minutes. The melted butter was really bright yellow. Now that these two ingredients are mixed, we're ready for the next step. This step uses the eggs, the vanilla extract, and the salt. I began by slowly mixing in the eggs one at a time. I made sure the first egg was fully incorporated before adding in the next one. In the recipe I stated that you can also use a whisk, but I found that this method works faster. Now the eggs are fully incorporated, so it's time for the vanilla extract. The extract mixes in really quickly, so then it's time for the salt. After the salt's added, I usually let it mix for another 1 to 2 minutes just to make sure everything's consistent. The batter's starting to come together nicely, but now it's time for the fun ingredients. For this step, we'll be using the flour, cocoa powder, and chocolate chips. Start off by adding in the flour. Then thoroughly mix it in, just like the other ingredients. Next up, add in the cocoa powder. Then mix it in just like the flour. We're getting towards the end of the brownie batter recipe, so make sure to mix it in really well. Make sure it has a smooth consistency without any tiny lumps. It's finally almost time to add in the chocolate chips. When I added the chocolate chips in, I went ahead and used my stand mixer on the lowest stir setting. But you can also carefully stir it in using a spoon, or fold it in using a spatula. No matter which method you choose, just make sure to take your time and do it right. Now my batter's finally complete. It should look something like this. And now it's time to add the batter to the 9x13 inch baking pan. This part isn't difficult, but I do recommend using one other person for their extra hands if you have someone available. If not, at least you won't have a camera like me, so you should be able to pull it off. Now that all the batter's been added, you can level it out using a spatula. This leveling will ensure that the brownie layer bakes evenly. And this is how it should look when the brownie layer is complete. Now that the brownie layer is complete, it's time to start on the cookie dough. I went ahead and set the brownie pan aside until later. Once again, here are the cookie dough ingredients from earlier. Start by grabbing your large mixing bowl, softened butter, and white and brown sugar. Grab the stick and a half of softened butter and add that in first. Then add in your white sugar. And next add in your brown sugar. When these first 3 ingredients have been added in, it's time to start mixing. Just like the brownies earlier, you can use a stand mixer like mine or an electric mixer. Either way, creaming the butter and sugar together should take about 2 minutes. When you're finished, it should be pale brown, light, and fluffy. It's looking good, so now we're ready for the next step. Next up, grab your egg and your 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. I added the egg in first, and while it was still mixing, I added in the vanilla extract. Continue mixing until both ingredients are fully incorporated. Next up, the dry ingredients. Grab a separate mixing bowl along with 2 cups of flour, a half teaspoon of baking soda, and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Then I poured them in the mixing bowl in that order. First the flour, then the baking soda, then the salt. When they've all been added, it's time to whisk them together. You can use a whisk like me or a large spoon. Once the ingredients have been combined, it should look like this. Now it's time for the 2 bowls to meet. Carefully add the dry mixture to the wet mixture. I kept the stand mixer stirring the entire time. I feel like the key to this step is to slowly add the dry ingredients in a little bit at a time. Take your time and do it right. After the dry mixture has been added, keep stirring for another 2 minutes. Once the mixture is consistent, it's time for the first of our 2 fun ingredients. First up, mix in 1 cup of semi-sweet chocolate chips. You can stir them in using a stand mixer like I did, just be careful. Or you can play it safe and fold them in using a spatula or spoon. Once they're mixed in, it's time for the star of the show. We get to add in the mini Cadbury eggs. These are more delicate, so we actually folded them in using a spatula. We did a little bit at a time. We ended up using about 3/4 of a cup of these eggs, but you can add more or less depending on your preference. Towards the end, we found it was easier to actually add them in using our hands. So my wife added the last few using this method. By this point, we had one awesome ball of Easter egg dough. It was time for this cookie dough to meet its new best friend, the brownie. I grabbed the brownie pan that I had set aside earlier and a cookie dough scoop. For this step, drop the cookie dough balls in even scoops over the brownie mixture. This is another step where you'll want to take your time. When you're adding the cookie dough balls, make sure to leave little gaps between. This will give the finished Easter Brookies a really cool look. You can look at the spacing that my wife did to get an idea of how it should look. But it doesn't have to be perfect. When all the cookie dough has been added, it should look something like this. We actually had a decent amount of cookie dough left over at the end, so I turned it into a bonus Easter cookie. I pressed the top of the cookie dough down with a mug to make the cookie flatter. Then it was time to place the brookie pan and the bonus Easter cookie in the oven at 350 degrees. The Easter Brookies have a baking time of around 30 to 35 minutes. And if you do a bonus cookie like us, the bake time is around 10 minutes. While the Easter Brookies are baking, it's time for a fun goose fact. Did you know that geese lay eggs that are always white? And they're also quite thick. I'm sure that makes the hatching process quite a workout for the little gosling. And now back to our Easter recipe. When the edges of the optional bonus cookie are brown, it's ready to be removed from the oven. Then, when the 30-minute bake time is up for the brookies, insert a toothpick into the center of the brownies and see if it comes out clean. If it's not, Bake for extra time until it does come out clean. When they are ready, carefully pull them out of the oven and let them cool. While the brookies are cooling, check out this awesome Easter castle that one of my sons drew. To show support for this little taste of custom artwork, along with our Easter recipe, subscribe. We're a small family channel, so it really means a lot to us. When the Easter brookies are done cooling, they're ready to be cut into small rectangular pieces. And then it's time to enjoy! We love this Easter egg brookie recipe because it combines two favorites in a festive way. We found it's a perfect baked dish to take to Easter gatherings. The kids and the adults love the mini Cadbury eggs. And the different colors of the eggs make them look really neat. We really hope you'll try this recipe, and if we can do it, you can definitely do it. Either way, I hope you have an awesome Easter. Cookies go great with brownies, but you know what else does? Cheesecake! Check out our ultimate brownie cheesecake recipe, another family favorite. See you there!